Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. I've just got a short review for you today on a product that I think a lot of you might have some interest in. So what am I going to be looking at? Well, this thing. What is it? Why, it's the Bigbig Won R100, of course, duh! So I'll elaborate a smidge, I suppose. This little USB adapter will allow you to use one modern system's first-party controller on basically any other modern system, PC, or SBC, with a few notable caveats. With this little thing, you can use a PS5 controller on, say, your Switch, Xbox One, PC, or Raspberry Pi. Or maybe you're a masochist who loves the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. You get the idea, right? Anyway, it's also worth noting that this works via Bluetooth, but the device you're using doesn't need to have Bluetooth built in. Bluetooth is already built into the R100 itself. Time for the obligatory disclosure. I received this product through the Amazon Vine program, which means that its value counts as income for me. Bigbig Won doesn't know that I'm conducting this review, they are not looking at it before it goes live, and they have absolutely no input on it whatsoever. Here's the box. Inside the box you get the USB adapter, a USB extender cable if you want to use it with an undocked switch, and a manual. Both the back of the box and the manual contain a compatibility chart. So does Bigbig Won's website and most other places that actually sell it. So if you're thinking about getting one of these, then make sure to check out the chart to ensure that the system and controller combination that you want to use will work. In general, you can use a DualShock 4, a Dualsense, a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, an Xbox One or Xbox One Elite controller. All you do is plug the included USB adapter into the system you want to use it on, and then follow the pairing instructions for the controller that you want to use, and any special instructions for this system. Here's the rundown on how I tested the R100. I tried a DualShock 4 and a Dualsense on my Windows 10 PC. I also tried the DualShock 4 on a Raspberry Pi 4 running Laka. In addition to that, I tried the DualSense on a docked Nintendo Switch, and I also tried the Switch Pro controller on a PlayStation 5. The one thing I didn't test was an Xbox One controller, because while I've got one, the batteries were dead, and I didn't have more batteries to put in there, and I wasn't going to run out and buy them for this review. Why are we still using AA batteries on products that are this new? I don't know. Microsoft, you should fix that. On a Windows 10 PC, whichever controller you use with this will be recognized as an X-input device, so you won't have to mess with any configuration or installing drivers or any of that jazz. Basically, you plug it in, pair the controller, and it just works. I didn't have to hit the button on the device, I just had to do the regular controller pairing instructions and it worked fine. I experienced no perceptible lag using a controller with the R100 at all. The buttons were assigned correctly, everything worked as it should have. So yeah, I'm not going to waste any more time on it, it works fine. The only slight caveat is that I had some problems during my initial attempt to use it because the DualShock 4 I was trying to use didn't have enough of a charge. After charging it, I had no issues at all since then, across multiple uses. How about the Raspberry Pi 4? Well, I tested it with Laka on a Pi 4, and it worked pretty well, minus one or two minor issues. Some emulators on Laka on the Pi 4 worked perfectly, without me having to make any changes to my existing controller settings at all. However, I did experience a little weirdness with a few emulators that doubled buttons up, meaning, saying I pressed L3, it would do the same thing as pressing L2, even if they weren't assigned the same in Laka. This happened to me in Genesis Plus, and one of the many versions of MAME I tried. So using it on a single board computer, well, the result you get may depend on both the board and emulator you're using. You'll at minimum need a board that supports X-input, which is most of the modern brand name ones. On the Switch, I tested the DualSense with a few games, including Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, Virtua Racing, Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon Everybody, and Gato Roboto. On the Switch, you do need to take an extra step in that you have to go into the system's menu and enable Pro Controller over USB support, which also turns off NFC. After doing that, everything worked totally fine. And man, what a difference! I really don't like the Switch Pro Controller. The ultra-stiff D-pad sucks, and the left analog stick on mine is completely worn and it creaks like crazy. Using the DualSense on the Switch was a pleasure, It made playing Ghosts and Goblins in particular so much better. No weird getting stuck with certain D-pad angles and things like that. The game worked like it should. The other games were also all fine. I have no problems to report on any of them whatsoever. And if you're wondering, the touchpad button press acts as a screenshot button. Since I didn't mention it earlier, the touchpad itself doesn't work on any of the other systems, so you're not going to get like mouse support if you use it on Android or anything like that. So here I switched things up.
Wait, that's terrible. I quit.
And used the Switch Pro controller on the PS5. And even though it said that this device wouldn't work on PS5 games, I couldn't just take their word for it, could I? So I tried it with Astro's Playroom, and you know what? They weren't lying, it doesn't work. You get an error message telling you that the game will only work with a Dualsense controller. I tried a few PS4 games, and yeah, they all worked exactly like you would expect. Now I had the pleasure of using a vastly inferior, yet more expensive controller on the PS4. What a joy! So one note on using this on a PlayStation 4 or 5, after you insert the USB adapter and then pair your controller of choice to the system, you have to hit the home button on the controller and then assign it to a user. For me, I had to manually turn off my Dualsense before it would recognize the Switch Pro controller and start working. Not a big deal, but good to know. Alright, brass tacks. So what did I think of the Bigbig Won R100 USB adapter then? For the most part, I liked it. Aside from that minor hiccup with some emulators on Laka on the Raspberry Pi 4, it performed exactly as it was supposed to, and frankly it matched or exceeded some similar products that cost up to 3 times as much. And the Raspberry Pi 4 issues, I could probably have solved those if I wanted to invest more time into it, but frankly I didn't want to because I'm not going to use it regularly on there, because I have other controllers specifically for that purpose. On my hardware review scale of 0 to 5, 0 being the worst and 5 being the best, I'd score the Bigbig Won R100 a 4 out of 5. This thing is only $20, and it works as well as or better than some similar but much costlier solutions. It even supports gyro controls on the DualShock 4 and Pro controller when using them on compatible systems. There are really only 2 things keeping it from a 5 out of 5. First is the build quality. It doesn't feel like junk or anything, but it's not as solid or as durable as I'd like from this type of product. It's also a tad large, so you may have trouble squeezing it into a USB port that doesn't have good clearance around it. Secondly, it really needs some type of error reporting. Maybe another LED to indicate with certain flashes that you're trying to pair a controller with a low battery or no power. Other than those things, I think this is a solid product that a lot of gamers will really appreciate. I'm likely going to permanently replace my PC controller with a DualShock 4 now, thanks to how easy the R100 makes it to do that. And yeah, I know I could install drivers and a wrapper and all that stuff, and use my DualShock 4 without this, but with the R100, you literally just plug it in, pair your controller, and you've got an X-input controller that's instantly recognized. Having near universal compatibility with all of the other modern systems makes it a really handy thing to have. That'll do it for this video, my retro and current gaming friends. You know the drill by now. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and share it with someone who you think might be interested. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel for more, primarily retro gaming goodness. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on the R100 and other similar products. Do you have this device? Do you have things that are like it? Tell me what you think about using different controllers with systems other than the ones they're intended for. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.